We are going live. We're getting ready to read. Give me just a second so I can get everything set up here. Give me a minute. We're getting ready to go live to read. Sorry, I was having a problem. A little bit. Okay. And we are reading now. Oh, there we go. I think we're doing. Okay, here we go. We're doing. First book we're making is called Make Your Bed. Okay. So the first book we're reading is called Make Your Bed. We're going to read one chapter, 3 different books, and this one is called Making Your Bed. Okay? If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride and it will encourage you to do another task and another and another. By the end of the day, the one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you will never do the big things. From Admiral McRaven's University of Texas commencement speech. Okay, and you can actually find this on um, YouTube and also on Facebook. Okay, so to my 3 children, Bill, John, and Kelly, no father could be prouder of his kids than I am of you. Every moment of my life has been made better because you are in the world. And to my wife, Georgianne, my best friend who made all my dreams possible, where would I be without you? Chapter 1. Um, Make your bed. Chapter 1. Start the day with a task complete. The barracks at Basic SEAL Training is a non-script 3-story building located on the beach of Coronado, California, just 100 yards from the Pacific Ocean. There is no air conditioning in the building, and at night, with the windows open, you can hear the tide roll in and the surf pounding against the sand. Rooms in the barracks are Spartan. In the officer's room where I berthed with 3 other classmates, there were 4 beds, a closet to hang your uniforms, and nothing else. Those mornings that I stayed in the barracks, I would roll out of my Navy rack and immediately begin the process of making my bed. It was the first task of the day, a day that I knew would be filled with uniform inspections, long swims, long runs, obstacle courses, constant harassment from the SEAL instructors. Attention, shouted the class leader. Lieutenant Junior Grade Dan Seward as the instructor entered the room. Standing at the foot of the bed, I snapped my heels together and stood straight up as the chief petty officer approached my position. The instructor, stern and expressionless, began the inspection by checking the starch in my green uniform hat to ensure the 8-sided cover was crisp and correctly blocked. Moving from top to bottom, his eyes looked over every inch of my uniform. Were the creases in the blouse and trousers aligned? Was the brass on the belt shined to a mirror-like radiance? Were my boots polished bright enough so he could see his fingers in their reflection? Satisfied that I met the high standards expected of a SEAL trainee, he moved to inspect the bed. The bed was as simple as the room, nothing but a steel frame and a single mattress. A bottom sheet covered the mattress, and over that was a top sheet. A gray wool blanket tucked tightly under the mattress provided warmth from the cool San Diego evenings. A second blanket was expertly folded into a rectangle at the foot of the bed. A single pillow made by the lighthouse for the blind was centered at the top of the bed and intersected at a 90-degree angle with the blanket at the bottom. This was the standard. Any deviation from this exacting requirement would be cause for me to hit the surf and then roll around on the beach until I was covered head to toe with wet sand, referred to as a sugar cookie. Standing motionless, I could see the instructor out of the corner of my eye. He warily looked at my bed. Bending over, he checked the hospital corners and they surveyed the blanket and the pillow to ensure they were correctly aligned. Then, reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a quarter and flipped it into the air several times to ensure I knew final test of the bed was coming. With one final flip, the quarter flew into the air and came down on the mattress with a light bounce. It jumped several inches off the bed, high enough for the instructor to catch it in his hand. Swinging around to face me, the instructor looked me in the eye and nodded. He never said a word. Making my bed correctly was not going to be an opportunity for praise. It was expected of me. It was my first task of the day, and doing it right was important. It demonstrated my discipline. It showed my attention to detail, and at the end of the day, it would be a reminder that I had done something well, something to be proud of, no matter how small the task. Throughout my life in the Navy, making my bed was the one constant that I could count on every day. As a young SEAL ensign aboard the USS Grayback, a special operations submarine, I was berthed in the sickbay, where the beds were stacked four high. The salty old doctor who ran sickbay instead insisted that I make my rack every morning. He often remarked that if the beds were not made and the room was not clean, how could the sailors expect the best medical care? As I later found out, this sentiment of cleanliness and order applied to every aspect of military life. 30 years later, the Twin Towers came down in New York City. The Pentagon was struck, and brave Americans died in the airplane over Pennsylvania. At the time of the attacks, I was recuperating in my home from a serious parachute accident. A hospital bed had been wheeled into my government quarters, and I spent most of the day lying on my back trying to recover. I wanted out of that bed more than anything else. Like every SEAL, I longed to be with my fellow warriors in the fight. When I was finally well enough to lift myself unaided from the bed, the first thing I did was pull the sheets up tight, adjusted the pillow, and make sure the hospital bed looked presentable to all those who entered my home. It was my way of showing that I had conquered the injury and was moving forward with my life. Within 4 weeks of 9/11, I was transferred to the White House, where I spent the next 2 years in the newly formed office of the combating terrorism. By October 2003, I was in Iraq at our makeshift headquarters on the Baghdad airfield. For the first few months, we slept on army cots. Nevertheless, I would wake every morning, roll up my sleeping bag, place the pillow at the head of the cot, and get ready for the day. In December 2003, U.S. forces captured Saddam Hussein. He was held in confinement, during which time he kept him in a small room. He also slept on an army cot, but with the luxury of sheets and a blanket. Once a day, I would visit Saddam to ensure my soldiers were properly caring for him. I noticed with some sense of amusement that Saddam did not make his bed. The covers were always crumpled at the foot of his cot, and he rarely seemed to incline to straighten them. During the ensuing 10 years, I had the honor of working with some of the finest men and women this nation has ever produced, from generals to privates, from admirals to seamen, recruits, from ambassadors to clerks, typists. The Americans who deployed overseas in support of the war of effort came willingly, sacrificing much to protect this great nation. They all understood that life is hard and that sometimes there is little you can do to affect the outcome of your day. In battle, soldiers die, families grieve. Your days are long and filled with anxious moments. You search for something that give you solace, that can motivate you to begin your day, that can be a sense of pride in an oftentimes ugly world. But it is not just combat, it is daily life that needs the same sense of structure. Nothing can replace the strength and comfort of one's faith. But sometimes a simple act of making your bed can give you the lift you need to start your day and provide you the satisfaction to end it right. If you want to change your life and maybe the world, start off by making your bed. Chapter 2. You can't go it alone. If you want to change the world, find someone to help you paddle. I learned early on in SEAL training the value of teamwork, the need to rely on someone else to help you through difficult tasks. For those of us who were tadpoles, hoping to become Navy frogmen, a 10-foot rubber raft was used to teach us this vital lesson. Everywhere we went during the first phase of SEAL training, we were required to carry the raft. We placed it on our heads as we ran from the barracks across the highway to the chow hall. We carried in the low slung position as we ran up and down the Coronado sand dunes. We paddled the boat endlessly from north to south along the coastline and through the pounding surf. 7 men, all working together to get the rubber boat to its final destination. We learned something else on our journey. With the raft, occasionally one of the boat crew members was sick or injured, unable to give it 100%. I often found myself exhausted from the training day or down with a cold or flu. On those days, the other members picked up the slack. They paddled harder, they dug deeper, they gave me their rations for extra strength, and when the time came later in training, I returned the favor. The small rubber boat made us realize that no man could make it through training alone. No SEAL could make it through combat alone, and by extension, you need people in your life to help you through the difficult times. Never was the need for help more apparent to me than 25 years later when I commanded all the SEALs on the West Coast. I was the Commodore of Naval Special Warfare Group 1 in Coronado, a Navy captain. I had by now spent the past several decades landing SEALs around the world. I was out for a routine parachute jump when things went terribly wrong. We were in a C 130 Hercules aircraft climbing to 12,000 feet, preparing for jump. Looking out the back of the aircraft, we could see a beautiful California day, not a cloud in the sky. The Pacific Ocean was calm, and from this altitude, you could see the border of Mexico just a few miles away. The jump master yelled to stand by. Now, on the edge of the ramp, I could see straight down to the ground. The jump master looked me in the eye, smiled, and shouted, "Go, go, go!" I dove out of the aircraft, arms fully extended, legs tucked slightly behind my back. The prop blasted from the aircraft sent me tilting forward until my arms caught air and I leveled out. I quickly checked my altimeter, made sure I wasn't spinning, and then looked around me to ensure no jumper was too close to me. 20 seconds later, I had fallen to the full to pull I had fallen to the full altitude of 5,500 feet. Suddenly I looked below me and another jumper had slid beneath me. Intersecting my path to the ground, he pulled his ripcord, and I could see the pilot chute deploying the main parachute from his backpack. Immediately, I thrust my arms to my side, forcing my head to the ground in an attempt to get away from the blossoming chute. It was too late. The jumper's chute popped open in front of me like an airbag, hitting me at 120 miles an hour. I bounced off the main canopy and spun out of control, barely conscious from the impact. For seconds, I spun head over heels, trying to get stable again. I couldn't see altimeter and was unaware of how far I had fallen. Instinctively, I reached for my ripcord and pulled. The pilot chute jettisoned from its small pouch in the back of the parachute, but wrapped around my leg as I continued to tumble toward the ground. As I struggled to untangle myself, the situation got worse. The main parachute partially deployed, but in doing so, twirled around my other leg. Craning my neck toward the sky, I could see my legs were bound by two sets of risers, the long nylon straps that connected the main parachute to the harness on my back. One riser had wrapped around one leg, the other riser around the other leg. The main parachute was fully out of the backpack, but hung up somewhere on my body. As I struggled to break free of the entanglement, suddenly I felt the canopy lift off my body and begin to open. Looking toward my legs, I knew what was coming next. Within seconds, the canopy caught air. The two risers, one wrapped around each leg, suddenly and violently pulled apart, taking my legs with them. My pelvis separated instantly as the force of the opening ripped my lower torso. The second small muscles that connected the pelvis to my body were torn from their hinges. My mouth dropped open and I let out a scream that could be heard in Mexico. Searing pain ached through my body, sending waves pulsating downward to my pelvis and upward to my head. Violent and muscular convulsions racked my upper torso, shooting more pain through my arms and legs. Now, like having an out of body experience, I became aware of my screaming and tried to control it, but the pain was too intense. Still head down and falling too fast, I turned myself upright in the harness, relieving some of the pressure on my pelvis and back. 1,500 feet, I had fallen over 4,000 feet before the parachute deployed. The good news, I had a full canopy over my head. The bad news, I was broken apart by the impact of the opening. I landed over 2 miles from the drop zone. Within a few minutes, the drop zone crew and an ambulance arrived. I was taken to the trauma hospital in downtown San Diego. By the next day, I was out of surgery. The accident had ripped my pelvis apart by almost 5 inches. The muscles in my stomach had become detached from the pelvis bone, and the muscles in my back and legs were severely damaged from the opening shock. I had a large titanium plate screwed into my pelvis and a long scapulated screw drilled into my backside for stability. This seemed like the end of my career. To be an effective SEAL, you had to be physically fit. My rehabilitation was going to take months, maybe years, and the Navy was required to conduct a medical evaluation to determine if I was fit for duty. I left the hospital 7 days later, but remained bedridden at my home for the next 2 months. All my life, I had the feeling I was invincible. I believed my innate athletic abilities could get me out of most perilous situations. And up to this point, I have been right. Many times during my career, I'd encountered life-threatening, excuse me, life-threatening, excuse me, life incidences, mid-air collisions in another parachute, uncontrolled descent in a mini sub, nearly falling hundreds of feet off an oil rig, getting trapped beneath a sinking boat, demolition that exploded prematurely, and countless more incidents where a split second decided the fate between living and dying. Each time I had somehow managed to make the right decision, and each time I was physically fit enough to overcome the challenge before me. Not this time. Now, lying in bed, all I felt was self pity. But that would not last for long. My wife, Georgianne, had been giving nursing duties. She cleaned my wounds, gave me the required daily shots, and changed my bedpan. But most importantly, she reminded me of who I was. I had never given up on anything in my life, and I assured me that I was not going to start now. She refused to let me feel sorry for myself. It was the kind of tough love that I needed, and as the days went by, I got better. My friends came by the house, called constantly, and helped with whatever they could. My boss, Admiral Eric Olson, somehow found a way around the policy that required the Navy to conduct a medical evaluation of my ability to continue to serve as a SEAL. His support for me likely saved my career. During my time in the SEAL teams, I had numerous setbacks. In each case, someone came forward to help me. Someone who had faith in my abilities, someone who saw potential in me where others might not, someone who risked their own reputation to advance my career. I have never forgotten those people, and I know that anything I achieved in my life was a result of others who have helped me along the way. None of us are immune from life's tragic moments, like the small rubber boat we had in basic SEAL training. It takes a team of good people to get you to your destination in life. You cannot paddle the boat alone. Find someone to share your life with. Make as many friends as possible, and never forget your success depends on others. We'll stop on chapter 3 and get the next book. Max Lucado. We are on Max Lucado now. We're on chapter 5. The only one in you. He gave his only son. All right. Hold on real quick. I'm going to check something. Okay. Take that down. All right, Max Lucado, if you remember correctly, this is New York Times bestseller author 316, The Numbers of Hope. And that's where we're at. Okay. Just a second, I gotta fix this. All right. And that should do it. Okay. Sorry, YouTube, just give me just a second here. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right, everybody. We are reading chapter 5. I didn't get a chance to read this one the other day of The Numbers of Hope. And this is the second book we've read. We just read 2 chapters of Making Your Bed. So we are on chapter 5. The only one and the only one and only. He gave his only son. We're on chapter 5. 2 of our 3 daughters were born in South Zone of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. We lived in North Zone, separated from our doctor's office and hospital by a tunnel-pierced mountain range. During Dedalin's many months of pregnancy, we made the drive often. We didn't complain. Signs of life do a samba on every street corner. Kambakana and her bathers, and Pamina and her coffee bars, Gava and her glamour. We never begrudged the South Zone forays, but they sure did bewilder me. I kept getting lost. I'm directionally challenged anyway, prone to take a wrong turn between the bedroom and the bathroom. Complicate my disorientation with randomly mapped 300-year-old streets, and I don't stand a chance. I had one salvation, Jesus. Literally, Jesus. The Christ, the Redeemer statue. The figure stands over the city, 125 feet tall, with an arm span of nearly 100 feet. More than 1,000 tons of reinforced steel. The head alone measured 10 feet from chin to scalp. Perched a mile and a half above sea level on Korokova Mountain, the elevated Jesus is always visible, especially those who are looking for it. Since I was often lost, I was often looking. As a sailor seeks land, I search for the statue, peering between the phone lines and the rooftops for the familiar face. I find him and I find my bearings. John 3:16 offers you the identical promise. The verse elevates Christ to thin air loftiness, crowning him with the most regular of titles, one and only Son. The Greek word for one and only is monogenes, an objective compound of monos, only, and genes, species, race, family, offspring, kind. When used in the Bible, one and only almost always describes a parent child relationship. Luke employs it to identify the widow's son, the only son of his mother. Luke 7:12. The writer of Hebrews states, Abraham was ready to sacrifice his only son Isaac. 11:17. John enlists the phrase 5 times in each case, highlighting the unparalleled relationship between Jesus and God. 1. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John 1:14. No one has ever seen God, but God, the one and only, who is at the Father's side, has made him known. John 1:18. 3. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. John 3:16. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already because he has not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. John 3:18. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. In 3 of the 5 appearances, the phrase modifies the noun son. In the 2 cases, it doesn't. The Son was either from the Father or at the Father's side. John 1:14-18. Monogenes then highlights the particular relationship between Jesus and God. Though God is the Father of all humanity, Jesus alone is the monogenetic Son of God, because only Christ has God's genes or genetic makeup. The familiar translation, only begotten Son, John 3:16, conveys this truth. When parents beget and conceive a child, they transform their DNA to the newborn. Jesus shares God's DNA. Jesus isn't begotten in the sense that he began, but in the sense that he and God have the same essence, eternal lifespan, unending wisdom, and tirelessly energy. Every quality we attribute to God, we can attribute to Jesus. Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father, Jesus claimed. And the epistle in Hebrews conquers. Christ is the radiance of God and the exact representation of his nature. Jesus occupies the perilous. Christ the Redeemer, pedestal. He claims not the most authority, but all authority. My Father has given me authority over everything. No one really knows the Son except the Father, and no one really knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chose to reveal him. Don't hurry through those words. They either the last straw of the ultimate truth. They warrant deliberate thought. My Father has given me authority over everything. Does Jesus own the only scepter in the universe? One follower declared as much. A Roman officer sent a message to Jesus asking the teacher to heal his servant. So Jesus journeyed toward the soldier's house. But the man sent friends to intercept Jesus, telling him not to make an unnecessary trip. Just say the word from where you are, and my servant will be healed. I know this because I am under the authority of my superior officer, and I have authority over my soldiers. I only need to say, go, and they go, or come, and they come. And if I say to my slaves, do this, they do it. This officer understood authority. When the one in charge commands the one beneath obey, the soldier effectively said, Jesus, you call the shots, inhabit the throne. You wear 5 stars on your shoulder. He saluted Christ as the supreme commander, and Christ didn't correct him. Jesus didn't dilute the man's opinion or adjust his comments. You flatter me. He could have said, but he didn't. Dismiss, but he didn't dismiss the adulation as overstatement. Rather, he accepted it as appropriate. I tell you, I haven't seen faith like this in all Israel. Christ claims ultimate clout, unshared supremacy. He steers the ship and the pilot and he steers the ships and the pilots the plane. When he darts his eyes, oceans swell. When he clears his throat, birds migrate. He banishes bacteria with a single thought. He sustains everything by the mighty power of his command. He is to history what a weaver is to a tapestry. I once watched a weaver work at a downtown San Antonio market. She selected threads from her bag and arranged them first on the frame, then on the shuttle. She next worked the shuttle back and forth over the threads, interweaving colors, overlapping textures. In a matter of moments, a design appeared. Christ, in like manner, weaves his story. Every person is a thread, every moment a color, every era a pass of the shuttle. Jesus steadily interweaves the embroidered of humankind. My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, says Lord, and my ways are far beyond anything you can imagine. A root meaning of the word translates thoughts is artistic craftsmanship, as if God says, my artistry is far beyond anything you could imagine. Christ, the one and only ruler, then claims to be the one and only revealer. No one really knows the Son except the Father, and no one really knows the Father except the Son. Jesus enjoys an intimacy with God, a mutual the Father shares with no one else. Married couples know something of this. They finish each other's sentences, anticipate each other's actions. Some even begin to look like each other, a possibility that deeply troubles my wife. Daniela and I have been married more than 25 years. We no longer converse. We communicate in code. She walks into the kitchen while I'm making a sandwich. Daniela, I ask? No, I don't want one. I'll open the fridge and stare for a few minutes. Daniela, she'll look at my sandwich preparation and answer, mayo on the top shelf, pickles on the door. She knows what I'll say before I say it. Consequently, she can speak on my behalf with highest credibility. If she says Max would prefer a different color or Max would approve this idea, listen to her. She knows what she's talking about. She qualifies as my proxy like no one else. How much more does Jesus qualify as God's Jesus, who exists at the very heart of the Father, has made him plain as day. When Jesus says, in my Father's house are many mansions, count on it. He knows. He has walked them. When he says, you are worth more than many sparrows, trust him. Jesus knows. He knows the value of every creature. When Christ declares, your Father knows what you need before you ask him, believe it. After all, he was in the beginning with God. Jesus claims to be not a top theologian or accomplished theologian or even the supreme theologian, but rather the only theologian. No one really knows the Father except the Son. He does not. No one really knows the Father like the Son or in the fashion of the Son, but rather no one really knows the Father except the Son. Heaven's doors has one key, and Jesus holds it. Think of it this way. You're a fifth grader studying astronomy. The day you read about the first mission to the moon, you and your classmates pepper the teacher with space travel questions. What does moon dust feel like? Can you swallow when there's no gravity? What about going to the bathroom? The teacher does the best she can, but prefaces most replicas with, I would guess, or I think, or perhaps. How could she know? She's never been there. But the next day she brings a guest who has. Neil Armstrong enters the room. Yes, the one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, Neil Armstrong. Now ask your question. The teacher invites. An astronaut Armstrong answers each with certainty. He knows the moon. He walked on it. No speculation or hesitation. He speaks with conviction. Now ask your question, the teacher invites. Oops. So did Jesus. He was teaching them as one who had authored authority. Jesus knows the dimensions of God's throne room, the fragrance of its incense, the favorite songs of the unceasing choir. He has a unique, one of a kind, unrivaled knowledge of God and wants to share his knowledge with you. No one really knows the Father except the Son, and those whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Jesus doesn't boast in his knowledge, he shares it. He doesn't gloat, he gives. He doesn't reveal, he reveals. He reveals to us the secrets of eternity. And he shares them, not just with the top brass or purebred, but with the hungry and needy. And the very next line, Jesus invites, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your soul." Do yourself a favor. Find the brightest highlighter manufactured and the darkest ink produced. Underscore, underline, and accept his invitation. Let me teach you. One of my Boy Scout assignments was to build a kite. One of my blessings as a Boy Scout was a kite building dad. He built a lot of things: scooters, on skates, go-karts. Why? He even built our house. A kite to him was stick figures to Van Gogh. Could handle them in his sleep. With wood glue, poles, and a newspaper, we fashioned a sky dancing masterpiece, red, white, and blue, and shaped like a box. We launched our creation on the back of a March wind, but after some minutes, my kite caught a downdraft and plunged. I tightened the string, raced in reverse, and did all I could to maintain the elevation, but it was too late. She Hindenburged earthward. Envision a red-headed, heart-stick 12-year-old standing over his collapsed kite. That was me. Envision a square-bodied man with a ruddy skin and coverall placing his hand on the boy's shoulder. That was my kite-making dad. He surveyed the head of sticks and paper and assured, "It's okay, we can fix this." I believe him. Why not? He spoke with authority. So does Christ. To all whose lives feel like a crashed kite, he says, "We can fix this. Let me teach you. Let me teach you how to handle your money, long Mondays, and crank in laws. Let me teach you why people fight. Death comes and forgiveness counts. But most of all, let me teach you why on earth you are on this earth. Don't we need to learn? We know so much, and yet we know so little. The age of information, the age of confusion. Much know now, know how, hardly any know why. We need answers. Jesus offers them. But can we trust him? Only one way to know. Do what I did in Rio. Seek him out. Lift up your eyes and set your sights on Jesus. No passing glances or occasional glimpses. Enroll in his school. Let me teach you. Make him your pole star, your point of reference. Search the crowd and streets and shadow casting roofs until you spot his face, and then set your sights on him. You'll find more than a hospital. You'll find the only one and only. Chapter 6. The heart he offers. He gave his one and only Son. Chapter 6. The heart he offers. He gave his one and only Son. As far as medical exams are concerned, this one was simple. As far as I'm concerned, no example is simple. If it couples the word irregular with heartbeat, I knew I was prone to have an accelerated pulse. When I see Denilin, my ticker ramps up. When Denilin brings me a bowl of ice cream, you'd think Geiger counter had struck pay dirt in my chest. Such palpitations are to be expected. It was the random rhythms that concern the cardiologist. You won't find a kinder physician. He did his best to ensure me that, as far as the heart condition goes, mine isn't serious. When it comes to cardiac concerns, you've got the best. Forgive my academic enthusiasm, but isn't that like telling the out-to-leap paratrooper your parachute has a defect, but it's not the worst type? I prefer the treatment of another heart doctor. He saw my condition and made this eye popping offer. Let's exchange hearts. Mine is sturdy, yours is frail. Mine pure, yours diseased. Take mine and enjoy the vigor. Give me yours, I'll endure its irregularity. Where do you find such a physician? You can reach him at this number, 316. At the heart of this verse, he deals with the heart of our problem. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son. He gave his one and only son. That's the craziest claim I've ever heard. A man once told me he and I shared a row and a meal on an airplane, but we did not share an appreciation for John 3:16. I don't need God to give anyone for me, he claimed. I have led a good life, held a good job. People respect me. My wife loves me. I don't need God to give me a son. Perhaps you agree. You appreciate the teachings of Jesus, admired his example, but no matter how you turn it around, you can't see the significance of his death. How can the death of Christ mean life for us? The answer begins with a heart exam. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. The spiritual cardiologist scans our hearts and finds deep disease. For from within our out of men's hearts come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. He describes our problem in a pandemic proportions. No one is righteous, not even one. No one is truly wise. No one is seeking God. Surely this is an overstatement, an exaggeration. Can it be that? We are utterly incapable of living the glorious lives God wills for us? This generation is oddly silent about sin. Late night talk shows don't discuss humanity's shortcomings. Some mental health professionals mock our need for divine forgiveness. At the same time, we rape the earth, squander non renewable resources, and let 24,000 people die daily from hunger or hunger related causes. In these modern decades, we have invented global threat, reinvented genocide and torture. The 20th century saw more slaughters than any other century in history. From the Ottoman massacre of 1.5 million Armenians in World War I to the 1990 slaughter of 3 million people in Rwanda and Sudan, lurking between them, the Ukraine terror famine, Auschwitz, the rape of Nanking, the Burma railing, Soviet gulag, Chinese Cultural Revolution, Cambodian killing fields, Yugoslavian Bangladesh slaughters, wars and genocide took more than 200 million souls in 100 years. Barbarism apparently is alive and well on the planet Earth. Deny our sin? Quasimodo could more easily deny his hump. Our heart problem? It's universal and personal. Do a simple exercise with me. Measure your life against those 4 standards from the 10 Commandments. Heaven's applicants should score well on God's basic laws. Wouldn't you agree? 1. You must not steal. Have you ever stolen anything? A paperclip? Parking place? Thief? 2. You must not lie. Those who say they haven't just did. 3. You must not commit adultery. Jesus said if you look at a woman with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart. 4. You must not murder. Before you claim innocence, remember, Jesus equates murder with anger. Anyone who is so much as angry with a brother or sister is guilty of murder. We assassinate a dozen drivers on the morning commute. Bad news from the cardiologist. Your test score indicates you are a thieving, lying, adulterous murderer. Contrast your heart with Christ. When you list the claims that qualify him as either crazy or kingly, don't omit this one. He asserts to have the only sinless heart in all history. He invited, can any one of you let me start over with that one. I apologize. Contrast your heart with Christ. When you list the claims that qualify him as either crazy or kingly, don't omit this one. He asserted to have the only sinless heart in all of history. He invited, "Can any one of you convict me of a single misleading word, a single sinful act? Issue that challenge to my friends, and hands will wave like stalks in a Kansas wheat field." In response to Jesus' challenge, however, no one could convict him of sin. His enemies drummed up false charges in order to arrest him. Pilate, the highest ranking official in the region, found guilt in Jesus. Peter, who walked in Jesus' shadow for 3 years, recorded, "He never did one thing wrong, not once said anything amiss." Jesus' standards mutes all boasting. I experienced a remotely similar standard when I met golf legend Brian Nelson. Brand new to the game, I had just broken 100 on the golf course for the first time. A friend had an appointment with Mr. Nelson and asked me to come along. En route, I bragged about my double-digit score, offering a hole-by-hole summary, fearing I might do the same with the retired icon. My friend asked what I knew of Byron Nelson's accomplishments, and then he told me. Bullet point, 5 major titles. Bullet point, 11 consecutive victories. Bullet point, an average score of 69 during the streak. My score of 98 seemed suddenly insignificant. Mr. Nelson's standards silence me. Jesus' perfection silences us. So how does he respond to our unholy hearts? Can a good cardiologist spot irregularity and dismiss it? Can God overlook our sins as innocent mistakes? No. He is the one and only judge. He issues decrees, not opinions. Commands, not suggestions. They are truth. They emerge from his holy self. Violate them and you dethrone him. Dethrone him at the highest cost. Jesus made his position clear. Anyone whose life is not holy will never see the Lord. Hardened-hearted souls will not populate heaven. It is the pure in heart who will see God. So where does that leave us? It leaves us drawing hope from a 5-letter Greek word. Hyper means in place of, or on behalf of. New Testament writers repeatedly turn to this preposition to describe the work of Christ. Bullet point. Christ died for our sins. Bullet point. Jesus gave himself for our sins. Bullet point. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law, having become a curse for us. Bullet point. Jesus himself prophesies, the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Bullet point. Greater love has no one than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. Bullet point. Before his death, Jesus took bread and explained, "This is my body given for you." And presenting the cup, he explained, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." For sounding about hyper, I apologize. But the point is crucial. Christ exchanged hearts with you. Yes, your thieving, lying, adulterous, and murderous heart. He placed your sin in himself and invited God to punish it. The Lord has put on him the punishment for all evil we have done. A Chinese Christian understood this point before her baptism. A pastor asked a question to ensure she understood the meaning of the cross. "Did Jesus have any sin?" he inquired. "Yes," she replied. Troubled, he repeated the question. "He had sinned," she answered positively. The leader set out to correct her, but she insisted, "He had mine." Though healthy, Jesus took our disease upon himself. Though diseased, he who accepted his offer are pronounced healthy. More than pardoned, we are declared innocent. We entered heaven, not with healed hearts, but with his heart. It is as if we have never sinned. Read slowly the announcement of Paul. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come. We enjoy the same status as Bertram Campbell. He spent 3 years and 4 months in prison for a forgery he did not commit. When the real criminal finally confessed, the governor declared Campbell not just pardoned, but innocent. God does for us exactly the same. God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. This is no transplant, mind you, but a swap. The holy and the vile exchange locations. God makes healthy what was sick, right what was wrong, straight what was crooked. Stephen Vorth witnessed the impact of this gift in a Lutheran church on the coast of Sweden. A handful of faithful had gathered to sing, pray, and celebrate communion. He took his turn at the altar, received the bread and the wine, and returned to his seat. As the minister turned his back to the congregation and began putting away the elements, two more worshippers came forward. A middle-aged woman pushed her mother in a wheelchair. The mother, writes Voroff, had the classic nursing home look, slumped to the right, thin, scraggly, colorless hair, vacant eyes, and a slack jaw with her tongue showing a bit. She was here for communion. Everyone but the minister knew of the two women at the altar. When he finally realized their presence, he retrieved the elements and administered the piece of bread and a sip of wine. He then paused, looked the old woman directly in the eye, and declared the customary blessing. Our Lord Jesus Christ, whose body and blood you have received, preserved your soul unto everlasting life. The irony struck Vorth. The woman was too old to keep her balance or her head straight. She brought nothing but a bent body and feeble bones. Dare one believe that heaven cares for such a soul? The moment Vorth asked the question, the church bells erupted, pealing, ringing unexpectedly and majestically. It was as if God himself was declaring, I will claim the frail, preserve the weak, and secure the weary. Let them come. And so we do. Scarred and journeyed, hardened we come. Can you do something with this heart, we ask? He nods and smiles. Suppose we discuss a swap. Chapter 7. Heaven's Whoever Policy. Okay. We'll read that one tomorrow. I told everybody 3 books. The third one. Where'd I put it? All right. This one is 15 Secrets Successful People Know About Time Management. Now, by the way, the 316 book is very important to me. I always like to read a spiritual book. I always like to read a little bit of the Bible. You know, I like verses and stuff out of there. You know, you need to level your playing field how you do things. I like motivational books, like how to make, what we read earlier was Making Your Bed. Making Your Bed by William McRaven. Okay, he was a Navy SEAL. Earlier today, when I was doing daily reflections, I'll read a little of this one. Now, let's go ahead and read some of this one. This one's Father to Daughter, Life Lessons on Raising a Girl. Father to Daughter, Life's Raising a Harry H. Jr. So, introduction. Raising a girl takes 2 parents. A mom to show her how to be a woman. A dad to encourage her to be fearless. A dad's job is to make his daughter courageous, to make her feel beautiful, to give her a sense of adventure, to give her security and confidence, to handle any situation. The relationship between a dad and a daughter is very simple. She will love her father and trust him completely forever, because her first love, her first hero, the first man in her life. The 5 keys. Always be involved in her life. 2. Respect and honor her mom. 3. Treasure every moment with her. 4. Pray for her every day. And 5. Be her hero. The Wonder Years. Realize from the beginning that even at 1 week old, she's a girl. So she's going to be just as charming and just as mystifying as every other girl you know. Being her dad will not change this. Accept the fact that she will melt your heart anytime she chooses. Take part in her life now. Don't wait until she's 15 to try to develop a relationship. She may look adorable, but be forewarned. Her diaper is going to be just as challenging as any boy's. When you get home from work, hold her as much as possible. This is for your benefit as much as hers. Sing to her while you're rocking her. She'll love hearing your voice, and it's a great way to pass the time at 1 a.m. I loved to sing to Gracie when she was little. Be sure to take a lot of photos of her now. She is changing every day. See, even this one, okay, for everybody that knows me, it even says, be sure to take a lot of photos of her now. She is changing every day. It's funny because I take a lot of photos and everybody knows it. All right. Tell her from day one that she can accomplish anything. Let her sleep on your chest when she's a baby. This is when the world begins to make sense. Yes, she's a girl, but her screams will be as loud as any baby boy's when she's hungry or tired or upset. Make her part of your world. Let her see you shave, work, read, and relax. She'll love spending time with you no matter what you're doing. Enjoy it while it lasts. Memorize her face, her hands, her eyes. She'll be memorizing everything about you. Keep saying daddy over and over to her. There's a good chance dad will be her first words. Introduce her to the joys of ice cream and chocolate sauce. She'll have as much fun playing with it as she will eating it. Give her baths. Do not leave this to mom alone. It is pure magic. Come to grips with the fact that you cannot carry her around all her life. She will eventually have to learn to walk. Remember, if you yell at a boy not to play with a wall socket, he'll either stomp off or do it anyway. A girl will cry. When she babbles at you in baby talk, always respond with a positive, yes, of course, you're right. Soon enough, you'll be telling her no all the time. Soon enough. Her mom will show her how to make chocolate chip cookies. You show her how to dunk them in milk. No, I showed her how to make chocolate chip cookies. Realize when she starts walking that anything she can reach will disappear. Find a child-proof place for your keys. Your cell phone, the TV remote. Know that while you will never understand her things for dolls, you will buy her more of them than you can possibly imagine. Teach her to count first her fingers, then Cheerios, M&Ms, dandelions, and fireflies. Emotionally, physically, and spiritually healthy girls are raised in a loving atmosphere. Do all you can to create a tranquil, harmonious home. Let the family dog sit under her high chair at dinner. Your daughter will be a source of food for him, and the dog will be a constant source of wonder for her. Invest in money in a college fund now. Be prepared to watch Disney movies with her some 200 times each. Your wife can play her Mozart and Beethoven symphonies. You introduce her to the Beatles. Tickle her, play with her, give her piggyback rides. She's not breakable. Never abandon the sense of wonder that comes from watching her and her mother together. Relish the moments when she toddles up and for no reason at all throws her arms around your neck. Resist the urge to buy her the world. Trust her mom to understand the mystery of little girls. You have yet to figure out the mystery of big ones. Realize that if you take her on a plane trip before she can talk, there's a good chance she'll scream for 2.5 hours. Encourage her to go barefoot. Never, ever make fun of her. Bear in mind that from the very beginning, your personality will shape her. Realize that as you shape her, she will shape you. Don't think that because she's a sweet little girl, she can't throw food with the best of them. Buy her a beautiful necklace very early on. Continue to add pearls or precious stones to it as she grows older. When you take her to the movies, be ready for her to bring along 5 or 6 of her favorite stuffed animals. When fathers of boys look at you strangely, act as if her behavior makes perfect sense. She will want a pet. She will also want to dress her pet in costumes and take it for strolls in her doll carriage. Take her out shopping, just the two of you. Remember, she's 5. You don't need to threaten your 401k, but you'll be tempted. Always remember, she can do anything a boy can do. In fact, her odds of going to medical school are better than a boy's. Brush her hair. You'll be amazed at how long she'll want you to do this. Never forget that fathers who aren't just supportive but also around produce daughters with high self-esteem. Read to her often. Very soon she'll be reading to you. Build a shelf for her dolls and stuffed animal collections. Ask her to tell you stories about each one. Have tea parties with her. Nibble on whatever she puts in front of you. Tell her it's delicious. Take her to the zoo. She'll love the elephants, the monkeys, the lions, the petting zoo, everything. Buy her a jungle gym. However she falls off that jungle gym, disregard those thoughts about killing yourself. Encourage her to play with the boys nicely. Take her fishing. She'll be disgusted by the worm on the hook, but she'll love reeling in the fish. Now, Gracie loved the worm and wanted it as a pet. She still does. Play catch with her, even if the ball is pink and covered with glitter. Talk to her about what she wants to be when she grows up. Continue to reinforce the idea that anything is possible. Don't tolerate her temper tantrums. Not now, not when she's 15. Your home will be more peaceful for this. Restrict her TV viewing unless you want her to grow up with the values Hollywood teaches. Dance with her always. She'll never be too young or too old. Remember, if a little girl doesn't get a nap, she can resemble something from the Stephen King novel. Put galoshes on her and take her out to stomp in mud puddles. Little girls are fascinated by escalators. Make sure you hold her hand. Make her a Valentine's Day card every year. Take her horseback riding. Girls love horses. Lie on your backs in the grass and look for shapes in the clouds together. It's a good way to approach life when you're young. You'll notice that little girls love to have their face painted with rainbows and stars. Be prepared to have several rainbows painted on your face every now and then, too. Be home for dinner on time. This is very important. Believe it or not, when she's 2.5, she's ready for a bike with training wheels. You, however, might not be. Ask her about her day every day. Share her wonder. Keep her secrets. This way she will begin to trust men. Write this down. Girls cry a lot. Sure, give her a baseball glove for her birthday or a hockey stick. Little girls love a hose and a sandbox. They also love to rip off their clothes after they get them wet. Don't freak out. Take her for a walk in the woods. Show her what poison ivy looks like, how to cross a stream, how to find her way back. Let her teach you about what she learned today, about the pilgrims, about multiplication or manatees, how to sing her favorite song, how to bake a cake, how to braid Barbie's hair. Show her how to play poker. It involves math, bluffing, paying attention, taking risks, making decisions, and knowing when to fold them and move on. Resist the urge to let her sleep in your bed. When she's scared or sick, independence starts in childhood. So sit with her in her own room until she falls back to sleep. Teach her not to be afraid of boys, but to be ready to challenge them. When she's old enough, sign her up for karate lessons. This is more for your sake than hers. Plant flowers with her, even if your garden is on a windowsill. Don't be surprised if during her first sleepover she calls you at 3 a.m. to come pick her up. The fact that she misses you is a wonderful thing. She will fall in love with dogs, kittens, birds, and stuffed unicorns. It may make no sense to you, just smile. If another girl or boy hurts her in any way, you will feel a very real inclination to inflict harm. Resist it. This impulse won't get any weaker as your daughter gets older. Show her how to climb a tree, also how to climb down. Praise her often. Let her know you love her the way she is. If you tell her this often enough, she might remember it throughout adolescence. Make up stories to tell each night. Tell to each other at night. Stretch your imagination. Remember, little sisters will idolize, chase, and annoy their big brothers, and sisters all through those brothers and sisters' teenage years. It really no one's fault. Teach her how and when to call 911. Unleash her on a computer when she's 4, and she may be writing code by the time she's 8. Learn to read her moods. The day is coming when she won't talk about everything with you. Buy her a chemistry set. Tell her it would be nice if her experiments didn't involve smoke. Fire her little brother. Get involved at her school. Go to the PTA meetings, meet her teachers, know what's going on. Encourage her to try new things while she's young, and she'll be more willing to try new things when she's older. Teach her it's more important to show off her brains than her body. Surprise her by showing up at her school for lunch, bearing Happy Meals or pizza. Always respect her privacy and modesty. Don't pry into the stories she and her mother tell each other. They'll let you in on them when they want to. Read her stories from the local newspaper or the New York Times or Wall Street Journal websites. This will spark a lifelong habit. Teach her computer safety early on, that chatting with friends is fun, but she should never, ever, ever give her name or contact information to a stranger. Reinforce her interest in math and science, both inside and outside the classroom. One of the most useful skills you can teach her is how to stand up for herself. Then she can stop anyone from picking on her. Talk to her about drugs and alcohol early and often. You don't want her to learn this stuff from anybody else. All right. I'll stop that one there. That was 100 pages. Didn't realize I was getting into that much. Okay. Let's see here. Now, the next book, but I'm trying to see how far these chapters are. Give me just a second. This is a new book, and I don't know. We'll stop there for tonight. Anyway, hope everybody's having a great night tonight. I look forward to hearing everybody tomorrow, and I will talk to everybody soon. See ya.